How's it going, crabs and crabs to be? I'm back. Today is the day that I've been procrastinating for who knows how long. It's time for my I Love You, Colonel Sanders, a finger-licking good dating simulator Let's Play series. Oh, hold on a sec. Oh, not yet? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it's a final boss one. Right. It's time to rank some final bosses. I have taken the final and alternate final bosses from every game I've played that has a final boss that I can remember. Before we begin, I should explain what's going to happen. For each boss, I'm going to have some YouTube chapters so that people who don't want a certain boss spoiled can skip ahead. For each boss, I'm going to show a picture of the ranking table I gave it, and I'll explain certain parts in more depth. After I've ranked every boss, I'll look at some stats. I'll give each one a percentage score and a letter ranking. And I'll find the average percentage and letter ranking of all of them. Then I'll discuss what changes might need to be made to the criteria, if any. And then I'll go hibernate for another 400 years. Please note that everything you're about to see is entirely my opinion. If you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. With that out of the way, let's go make some rank some final bosses. This boss got a 28 out of 50. I quite liked the design and the lore of the boss, but the fight was a little underwhelming and boring too. Every attack is a magic conjuration, except for 2 unique sword attacks. None of the conjurations can be parried, and most can't be iframed through, if any, so you're stuck repositioning to dodge them all. To add to it, none of the combat abilities are ever really used, and it just isn't a fun boss to fight. Though I do like that it's the only boss with multiple health bars for multiple phases. It is a nice touch. I gave bonus points because the boss is fought in a different way than most, in that there's a sword with an eye that you have to attack to be able to attack the main boss and do damage to it for a bit before the helmet closes again and you have to attack the sword again. This one got a 43 out of 50, a very high score. The mood is absolutely perfect, the background looks beautiful and the arena feels super big and epic, and her music is just so insanely good. Her design and lore are top-notch as well, and she's a really fun boss. The lead up to her fight is really epic as you have to find Hibrael in 5 different locations to be able to fight 4 other Amanecidas. Each time a really epic melody plays and a cool cutscene happens that makes really good use of controller rumble. My biggest and possibly only complaint is that she has no unique moves. She just borrows moves from the Amanecidas, which also makes her easier as you already know the moves that she'll use. With all of this aside though, this is one of my favorite bosses of all time. I gave this boss a 36 out of 50. The fight is very fun, the design is really well done, but where it really shines is the mood. The first phase's OST is the definition of a final boss track. Extremely epic, very orchestral with the choir, and conveys the overall mood that this is the end. Then just when you think it can't get any better, Phase 2 starts. Suddenly the song is an epic mix of brass and choir and a huge sounding orchestral thrumming and a familiar plin plin plon piano track. Gwyn's theme from Dark Souls 1, in a different key. Combine this with the massive 5-hit combo he does as it plays, and it feels like he's going to beat the living shit out of you. After the massive combo is over, the orchestra fades out a little and the music transitions to a softer melody, very reminiscent of Gwyn's theme from Dark Souls 1. I kid you not, despite me not playing Dark Souls 1 at the time, upon reaching second phase and getting my ass kicked by the combo to the sound of that song, my jaw literally dropped. It's really difficult to describe how near perfect this fight's mood is. You really need to experience it for yourself. My biggest problem with this boss is its difficulty. It's far too easy. It has some attacks that are decently hard to dodge, but most of them do very little damage, and it's easy to use an Estus Flask afterwards to regain the amount of health lost. Despite how the second phase makes him feel like he's going to throw you onto the pavement and spit on you, he ends up gently nudging you and pouring a drop of water on your head instead. If this boss's attacks did as much as Nameless King, this boss would be way better. This epic man received a 39 out of 50, and he does many things quite well. My favorite thing about this boss is that he feels like a final boss, and unlike Soul of Cinder, his difficulty matches that. Here's a clip of my first time beating him. I'm getting absolutely punted by this man's cloak, and those who have fought him know how hard to dodge it really is. I had used all my Estus flasks, an ember, almost all my rotten pine resin, and a divine blessing, and I beat him with one hit left I could afford to take. His difficulty is also reflected in this clip of me beating him in New Game Plus. I had used all my Estus, an ember, all my rotten pine resin, a divine blessing, and all my Siegbrows, and if he had so much as breathed on me, I would have died. Some might say I'm just bad, and to that I say, yeah, probably. But he was really hard for me, and therefore I'm giving him a high ranking, so stop crying. This boss got a 33 out of 50. He is really fun, nice and challenging, has a great song and mood, and absolutely no lore! I love everything about this fight. He's really fun, nice and difficult, and has a super great mood. However, there's one thing about this boss that is near unforgivable: his absolute lack of lore. In fact, when I say that, I mean I can explain to you all of his lore right now. He hates the giant and the alchemist. He lives in the throne room and doesn't eat. He's big. Oh wait, he has a lore room now? Oh cool, maybe I'll finally get to know what he is. So it seems the hand was above the king's suspicion. I suppose that means he plans to betray him. I guess he does eat, but he doesn't care what it tastes like. The king removed the portrait of the giant, okay, and the cook was executed. Wait, that has nothing to do with the hand. So yeah, anyways, he has no lore. Look at his lore page on the wiki. It looks pretty big, right? But guess what? It's all quotes. You know a boss has no lore when you can literally list all of the references to it in the entire game in one wiki section. Let's look at how big it is when we remove the quotes and text explaining where the quotes are found. 4 lines. 4 goddamn lines. Here's the game's least interesting and most boring boss's lore page for context. Anyways, the lack of lore is the only real downside to this fight, but oh man is it a big one. I gave this boss a 38 out of 50. I quite enjoy this fight, and there's not much negative criticism I can give it. I gave it a point for not having dialogue, as I didn't want to punish the boss's overall score for something that actually makes it better. I really like the lack of humanity in the boss. Its design makes it feel like a cosmic entity that taunts the drifter throughout the game, and feels chaotic and creepy. The music, while not very epic, suits the boss very well. It feels creepy and distorted and gives you the feeling of conquering the foe that has been hindering you from within all along. The fight itself is decent as well. It has large attacks, combo attacks, and since most of the attacks have a sort of order to them, he doesn't spam moves. I should also note I was a tad harsh on this boss in my last video. I said it didn't use mechanics much, however I think it uses mechanics pretty well. It has attacks you need to dash to dodge, projectile spam that is pretty much begging for you to reflect, and an attack with eyeballs that you can hit to destroy them. It could definitely be better considering how many different mechanics the game has, but it's really not as bad as I made it seem like in the last video. Here's where I started to question the accuracy of the criteria I made. Shriek received a 31 out of 50. Now I absolutely love this boss, so I'll cover why this happened at the end of this video. The mood in this fight is great. It feels epic and powerful, and oh my god, the lead up is amazing. The music is really good, but in my opinion it feels a little overplaced during some parts of it. The design is so goddamn cool. Max points for appearance because she looks absolutely amazing and so terrifying. Max points for relations because of a few things. This character is my favorite antagonist out of every game I have played, hands down. There are a few reasons for this. Most of it revolves around the first time you really meet her, in the Silent Woods. Those who played Blind Forest first will remember a part after restoring the element of winds, when Kuro, the giant owl antagonist of the game, is searching for you, and you have to quickly make your way through the landscape without being spotted. I really enjoyed this part of the game, as I felt genuine fear making my way through. Not like a horror game though, I was just scared that she'd see me and I would have to restart. I was a little upset when that only happened the once, but Will-o'-the-Wisps made up for that. The first time this happens is in the Silent Woods. The area is dark, gloomy, and quiet. As soon as you enter it, you are introduced to the game's terrifying antagonist, Shriek. Her design looks so fucking cool, and she is huge and terrifying. The entire area I was tense going through it, and every time she showed up, she'd send a chill down my spine. It also helped that I was playing this part at night in the quiet darkness of my room. And the whole area felt like that one sequence of events from Blind Forest, but with some more freedom. Of course, later in the game you encounter her more and have some conflicts as well, all leading to the epic final battle. She's quite fun too, using almost every movement ability acquired through the game, but I won't go too in depth as I've already talked about her enough. I had to change up this criteria slightly to fit the weird way Terraria does bosses, so I removed both arena ratings as those are built by the player. The mood in this fight is pretty cool. It feels like a final boss, even if just because of his appearance and the lead up. He's pretty well designed. He looks absolutely sick and Lovecraftian, but due to it being Terraria, there's no mention of him prior to fighting him. I gave a couple points for this anyways, as I didn't want that fact to mess up his score, as it makes sense for a game like this. The gameplay is quite fun, and this is the only boss who got an actual point for spamming attacks, as the projectile spam is very Terraria, and it feels right in this boss. This is another boss that made me question the criteria's accuracy with its 26 out of 40, but we'll get to that later. Undertale has more than one final boss in a way. Sans could be considered one, so could Omega Flowey, but for the purposes of Undertale already being a hard game to apply this criteria to, I'm only going to do the true final boss. As with the Moonlord, I had to remove the arena rankings from this fight due to it being a 2D turn-based game. Azrael comes in at a 31 out of 40. The mood is very nice, the music is, no surprise, very good, and feels like the end of the game. However, unlike other bosses on this list, it has an uplifting mood, which fits the game perfectly. The chaotic lights in the background also add to it being the final boss. His design is really cool too. He looks sick, he has one of my favorite relationships with the protagonist I have ever seen, and he has dialogue. Thank you, Toby Fox, for giving your bosses dialogue. Gameplay-wise, he's great. There is, however, a major downside to this boss. You can't lose. It's just not possible. I don't mean this in the sense that it's just really easy. I mean if you die, you don't. It's like Sekiro's Resurrections, but you have infinite of them. That being said, the fight is really long to make up for it, and it does arguably improve the mood, but I wish it was a difficult fight like Sans. This man comes clocking in at a 34 out of 50. The mood is pretty damn awesome. I love the boppin' hard rock guitar and drums track, but it doesn't feel like a final boss much. The arena is huge and awesome, and the background is bland with the colors gray, which further enhances the whole King of Nothing part. Also, it's worth noting that the game's composer, Cristodoulou, put a Prince/Purple Rain reference in his official OST. That makes him automatically cool. His design is pretty sick. He looks cool, he has dialogue, although you never read it as it's sent in the in-game chat. However, there is no mention of him. Now, I'm sure the game's deeper lore mentions him somewhere, but I have never personally heard of him outside of fighting him. As for the gameplay, he feels like a fun, finished boss, but is a little lacking in attacks. The phases are pretty well balanced too. However, there's an entire phase dedicated to just killing enemies, and I don't like that. I gave him some bonus points for the moon having the best song and the OST, hands down, followed by Rain, formerly known as Purple, of course. This guy came in at 32 out of 50. He's a little hard to rank. The mood is nice, it doesn't feel like an epic final boss, but instead feels dark, gloomy, and bland, hence the spooky music and the bland colors in the background. His design is great though. He looks pretty cool, though I did prefer seeing only the helmet when he was a prisoner, and the relations are great. He helps you throughout the game, and you help him. I love betrayals like this in games, as cliche as they may be. However, I really wish he had mid-fight dialogue, because his voice acting is just so good. Just listen to it.
No, it can't be. I see it's only his face and his form stretched across your frame.
Anyways, gameplay-wise, I'd describe him as decent. He is pretty fun, however, all his difficulty feels artificial. He has a lot of health and 2-shot speed. I was TL though, so I can't really complain about high damage. Though let's be real, Teal plus Hammer and Chisel supremacy. But his attacks are really easy to dodge. This fight takes like 20 minutes simply because of how much health he has. I wish the attacks were slightly less damaging, harder to dodge, and he had maybe half the health. I gave him a negative bonus point because of one simple thing.
You can't get the goddamn ending without going into New Game Plus.
It's better than Dark Souls 1 where you go into New Game Plus immediately after killing the final boss, but I still hate it. This man came in at 21 out of 50, the lowest score of all. The mood is pretty good. It does feel like a final boss for sure. I really like the organ music before the fight starts. Now for design. He looks decent, I guess. He does not speak during the fight, barely even before or after. And of course, relations. Literally zero mention of him throughout the entire game. The only reason I don't give him a 0 like I did for Hand of the King is because he actually does have lore. However, you learn it like 10 minutes before fighting him. He has 0 character development. As for gameplay, he's pretty damn fun. However, he feels underwhelming difficulty-wise. I have to applaud him for using almost every mechanic throughout the game, though. If I had to describe this boss in one word, it would be lame. Not bad, just lame. Also known as the Hollow Knight, this boss comes in at a 39 out of 50. The mood is what stands out for this guy. The music is perfect, especially in Phase 3, and the arena and background look very final. Design-wise, he looks pretty damn sick. He has really good relations and does not speak. However, I gave him a point for this as his lore forbids him to do so. Now, for the gameplay. This man is too easy. He has lots of cool attacks and he's pretty fun, however he's not hard. He should only take you like 3 to 4 attempts if you are not bad. Now I have to pay tribute to one specific moment that awarded this guy 2 bonus points. The beginning of Phase 3. He starts committing Sudoku. This is an extremely powerful moment, and I hate to see streamers and such overlook it. The music fades into somber melody, and he starts stabbing himself with a clear intention to take his own life. Many people interpret this in different ways, and here's my take. As you begin to weaken him, the Radiance's hold on him also weakens, and so he is able to peer through the infection and see you, a fellow vessel, the one who came so close to escaping the abyss like he once did, a vessel who's trying to kill him, to take his place and save Laudes, and he tries to help. In small moments when he can pierce through the infection, he tries to help you by killing himself, until the Radiance takes control again. Notice how in Phase 3 and 4, some of the attacks make him seem like he's in pain, or maybe not even fully alive. He almost looks like a corpse here. I think this is the Radiance's last attempts to control her puppet to kill the knight. Anyways, this whole lore dump gets at how significant this self-stabbing is, and it's a very powerful moment for the game, and I absolutely love it. This large moth got a 35 out of 50. This is the only boss that I think the criteria marked too high. The mood is pretty good, upbeat and orchestral music, cool background and arena style. The design is pretty cool too, looks neat, has some cool Dreamnail dialogue, and is very lore important. Now for the gameplay. Here we go. The arena is nice and diverse, the pacing is really good, and it has a cool moveset. However, this boss is hard. Like, I found it harder than the acclaimed difficult bosses like Nameless King or Isshin Sword Saint. I always love a challenge, but Jesus Christ, man, give me a break. There is a simple way to describe why this boss is so hard in 2 words. Overlapping attacks. The absolute worst decision I have ever seen in a 2D boss fight. Team Cherry did a lot of things well, but what? This whole boss feels like a hate crime against humanity. Hey look, swords that cover the whole screen. Dodge those. Also, homing light balls that spawn on top of you and are the same color as the background. Dodge those at the same time. Oh, you got hit? That sucks for you. You take 2 damage, bitch. Are you gonna cry because you're now at half health after 2 seconds? Well, here, have some spinning swords, a screen wipe laser, and some floor spikes as well. But don't worry, the spikes only do 1 damage. You know a boss is too hard when you find yourself deliberately throwing yourself into spikes to take less damage, as if this was Dead Cells with the masochism mutation. Like, goddamn man, chill out. If you manage to survive 50 attacks at once, now you get to do it with no floor. If by God's grace you somehow get through that, you get to cosplay as the GPU market and go unreasonably high to a place where you can't afford. And by that I mean you can't afford to get hit, because if you do, you have exactly 2 platforms to use to recover yourself, or you fall into the void for extra damage. Oh, and by the way, the only attack she does here is summoning the sun to home in and smite you, as if this was Super Mario Bros. 3. If a blue moon occurs and blesses you with the power of 1 trillion lions and you manage to beat her, you are greeted with this message. What the fuck? My man, my absolute lad, with a mere 35 out of 50. This is when I knew for sure something was wrong with my criteria. The mood is great. I honestly prefer his music to that of Sword Saint, but purely from generally listening to it. It gives off the mood that this man is going to kick your shit in, rather than an epic final battle, which is still cool though. Though the arena is overused in the game, it has some fire, which is nice. The design is pretty sick. He looks cool, mostly because of his stance though. He has some dialogue that also gives off the feeling that he will Alt F4 your ass back to the Moonview Tower where you started from, and has some great relations. Gameplay-wise, I love the fight. He's just Sword Saint Phase 1, but with a dodge and some sick fire attacks in Phase 2 that just crumples your health like it's nothing. I only wish he had an extra phase to match the intensity of Sword Saint. I love this fight, but it feels like a recycled Sword Saint in a way. I'm glad he had some unique moves though. Well, my man, my absolute legend, my good old chum. This beast comes charging in with a Glock at a whopping 48 out of 50. Music. It feels super epic. First phase theme is really amazing. Arena. Big and open, lots of grass. The way there's that hill that he starts on top of just feels perfect. Plus, it's where you fought the tutorial boss. The background is dark, perfect for the fight, and as it goes on, there is increasing amounts of lightning. Unfortunately, the sky is very hazy, and the mountains are hard to see. For design, my man looks sick. One eye, slight facial hair, awesome helmet, and a massive glaive thing. This is the fight that made me decide to add dialogue to the list, as it fits so seamlessly with the fight. The relations are amazing. I love how he gets resurrected in his prime. Now, to summarize the gameplay section, everything is done perfectly. The phases and pacing are perfect, although some may argue he has too many. He's super hard, but not too unfair, and his moveset is flawless. He has a large attack, some combo attacks that are actually legally too satisfying to parry. Like seriously, I'm gonna have to bring him to jail for too much satisfaction. And he doesn't spam attacks at all. I tried so hard to give him a bonus for something, but really he doesn't need any. I decided to make this criteria because of this boss, so anything that would be for a bonus is already on the criteria. Plus a 48 out of 50 is still insanely good. Now, his inner version is even better due to his two new attacks that I just love so much, but he doesn't count as he isn't a final boss. I could go on for hours about why I love this boss so much, but instead, let's get some total results and look at some percentages. Alright, so for an easy way to view all rankings side by side, I converted all the scores into percentages, and I used this key here to give each boss a letter ranking. So here is the final results table. As you can see, all of the actual scores, except Absolute Radiance, I expected to be higher or the same as they ended up. I took the average percentage of every boss, and that was 70%, which is a C. That's right, the average final boss ranks a C with this criteria. So, something is clearly wrong with it. After lots of thought, I think I've figured out the biggest problem. Let's take a look at the example of Slave Knight Gael. Everything in his criteria seems to check out. But I love this boss. It deserves better than a B. So let me think about why I love this boss. Well, I love the music and the mood. I love his design. But most of all, he is a fun boss to fight. Looking through the gameplay and mechanics section, I see absolutely nothing that contributes to general fun. Sure, the gameplay and mechanics section is supposed to tie into the boss's fun factor, but it clearly doesn't. He scored a 5 out of 9 in the moveset, which is the lowest moveset score tied with Mithrix, who has like 3 attacks. This is mostly due to no large attack and him spamming, but he is still a fun boss. I'd consider him probably 3 times as fun as Mithrix, yet they scored the same. So to improve this criteria, I will add a fun factor rating. It won't apply to any of the other categories, it will be independent. Next, let's look at Shriek. She scored much lower than I would have liked for a few reasons. Let's imagine if she had dialogue. She would have been a 34 out of 50, which is 68%. Although this is still a C, it's better than her current 62%. However, Shriek doesn't need dialogue to be a really well-designed boss, and her design score suffers from the lack thereof. This applies to many other bosses on this list too, so I have decided to remove the dialogue score from the max, similarly to bonus, but you can still earn points for dialogue, however not earning points will not reduce your percentage as much. Lastly, and I think this is the biggest issue, is a lack of accuracy in each area. This is a little hard to explain, so let me show you two examples. Last Son of the Miracle and Isshin Ashina. They both were ranked with 2 out of 3 for phases. However, I think the pacing in Isshin's fight is much better than Last Son's, even though they scored the same. I decided against using decimals in the scores, because that would make the math more annoying, so only using integers made things less accurate. The best change I could see for this is to double the amount of points given for each area, except for a few, to be able to have a more accurate representation. This brings the total up to 101. I kept the dialogue as 3 as it's not too important, and it is now a bonus score. I also kept the 3 italic areas as 1 because 1 point would be impossible. You can't have half a combo attack. I want to bring it down to an even 100 because that single extra point was hurting my soul. So I made phases be out of 5, as I felt it made sense and it also brought gameplay and mechanics to be a nice round 40. Finally, I have a nice round score out of 100, with an absolute maximum total of 113. I don't want to re-rank all of the bosses with this as it took long enough the first time, so I'll re-rank a boss that I think the score captured well, and one I don't think so as much, to see if there's some good change. And with this, Sword Saint gets a 96 out of 100, which is 96%, exactly the same score as he got with the old criteria. So that's a good sign. Next up, Shriek got an 89 out of 100, which is an A, and that's what I predicted she would get. So it looks like this criteria is working out pretty good. I will be ranking final bosses after fighting them and posting them on Twitter, which will be linked in the description if you want to see them when I post them. I will leave a link to this new criteria template in the description too if anyone would like to rank their own bosses. If you do, please send it to me on Discord or Twitter. Hey everyone, it's unscripted editing Xanathar here, and I just want to thank you all so much for watching the video. I had a really hard time editing it. The effect of having half the screen show gameplay, the other half have blurred out gameplay, and the criteria was really taxing on my computer and took a long time to actually do. And then I ran into a bunch of editing problems and my software broke, and I had to spend hours fixing it. So this really did drain a lot out of me. So the fact that you've made it to the end really means a lot. I don't want to be a typical YouTuber here, so I just ask that if you like the video, leave a comment and share it with your friends. The more comments I get, the better I feel about myself. Please, I rely entirely on the internet for my validation. Sorry it took so long, keep an eye out for my next video. It's a special one I did with a friend of mine. So anyways, that's enough of me. Go now and continue to carcinize in peace. See you later, nerds.